Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world, more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in Colorado, in Fiji Island, in Africa, in the United Kingdom, Mexico, Spain, and to our brethren in Australia, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to the 144,000 living saints listening right now, viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a wonderful evening. Now, let us begin our study. This is episode number 17 on our subject, the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. Now, reading to symbolic code number 5 and 6, page 8, it says, all that are found members of the church up to the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9 will either receive the seal and be a part of or with the 144,000, or else be left without the seal and fall under the slaughter weapons of the 5 men. So in this reading, first of all, we know that the word all indicates without exemption. So, the same with the statement in 1 SR 218 saying, the biblical number 7 is used as a symbol, meaning all. Therefore, the symbol does not exclude any, but means all. So the word all does not exclude any. So this reading in 2 symbolic code number 5 and 6, page 8, saying, let us use this diagram number 83. That all that are found members of the church up to the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9 will either receive the seal and be a part of the 144,000, or else be left without the seal and fall under the slaughter weapons of the 5 men. Since the word all does not exclude any, so we need to ascertain clearly what church mentioned in that reading. that all that are found members of that church will fall either one of that three classes mentioned. First, either to be a part of the living saints. Second, either to be a part to be with the 144,000. And third, either to fall under the slaughter weapons. The statement is very clear, brothers and sisters. So in that church, there will be no more wicked dead. Because it was not mentioned in this reading. It says, all that are found members. So the members of that church will fall either one of the three classes that had been mentioned. Either to be among the 144,000, either to be with the 144,000, or either to fall under the slaughter weapons of the 5 men. So, the members of that church, only one, as represented by the wicked, and that is the living wicked. Or in other words, anybody who will die as a member of that church, 100% it is guaranteed by inspiration. As a righteous. Because the only wicked, which is a member of that church, will fall under the slaughter weapons. Or in other words, any wicked, as a member of that church, their lives were preserved. And they will no longer die in natural death. But rather, they will die with the slaughter weapons. And since it is the article used is definite, it did not say found members of a church, but rather of the church. So there must be a definite church by which in that church all the members will either fall into either one of the three classes. 2 among them is righteous, that is, either up to be among the 144,000, or either to be with the 144,000, but the Other one is wicked. To fall under the slaughter weapons of the 5 men. And to repeat again, whatever the church mentioned here, all who will die, member of that church, guaranteed 100%. They are righteous and all of them, their salvation is guaranteed. So, we need to ascertain clearly, brothers and sisters, what church mentioned in that reading. And to repeat again, it cannot be applied in 1844. Because 100% in 1844, there are many wicked among Seventh-day Adventist Church who died. And in this passage, there is no wicked dead mentioned. Only living wicked. The one who will fall under the slaughter weapons of the 5 men. Now, here's another passage that I would like to read. In all symbolic code. It was already stated there. One symbolic code, 11 to 12, page 9. It says, all that are found members of the church at the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9 will either receive the seal and be of the 144,000, or else be left without and fall under the slaughter weapons of the 5 men. So the statement is very plain, meaning at the commencement of the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9, there will be only 2 classes that ever remain among Sabbath keepers. Living saints and living wicked, according to that reading. There is no more mention with those who will be with the 144,000, but rather, all that are found members of the church at the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9 will receive the seal and be of the 144,000, or else be left without and fall under the slaughter weapons of the 5 men. Now, that reading is perfectly corroborating to the statement in 1 SR 219. It says here, those who cannot undergo 1 SR 219, those who cannot undergo the trial are laid in their graves. 1 SR 219. Those who cannot undergo the trial are laid in their graves. What trial? The very ordeal of the time of trouble. So, let's read 2 SR 173. Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yes, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Revelation 14:13. Which die from henceforth, that is, from the commencement of the loud cry. Thus the word declares that some of the saints will be laid in the grave even during the time of the harvest. Loud cry. We quote from Counsels on Health, page 375. Many will be laid away to sleep before the fiery ordeal of the time of trouble shall come upon the world. 2SR 173. So, the statement here, who cannot undergo the trial, that is, the fiery or fiery ordeal of the time of trouble. So the saints, the righteous, being laid down to sleep before the commencement of the little time of trouble. So, let us read again. 1SR 219. It says, those who cannot undergo the trial are laid in their graves, while 144,000 remain and will escape. But the balance in the church, and for sure the word now is pointing to the commencement of the time of trouble. But the balance in the church shall perish in the ruin. May God help His people. So, 1SR page 219. So that statement is very plain. That at the commencement of the little time of trouble, among Sabbath keepers, under the banner of the third angel's message, which we commonly called as the spiritual Israel, the only saints that ever remain are the living saints. All others who will not be a part of that special company, living saints, 144,000 in number, they will perish. Meaning, they are living wicked. So at the commencement of the little time of trouble, there will be only two classes that remain among Sabbath keepers under the banner of the third angel's message, the spiritual Israel. And that is the living saints and the living wicked. Because all the righteous that will not be a part of the living saints, 144,000 living saints, they will be laid down to sleep before the fiery ordeal of the little time of trouble. And since they cannot undergo such trial, according to 1 SR 219, and in order to save them, God mercifully laid down them to sleep. So, this description in early writings page 17, I would like to read. We all went under the tree and sat down to look at the glory of the place. When brethren Fitch and Stackman, who had preached the gospel of the kingdom, and whom God had laid in the grave to save them, although we know that Sister White and Betty Hotep is already considered as a part that had been laid down to the grave at this present time. He says, whom God had laid in the grave to save them, came up to us. That pronoun us must be pointing only to the living saints, 144,000 spiritual Israel. Although it seems that in that statement, Sister White expected to be among the living saints, came up to us and asked us what we had passed through while they were sleeping. So, that is during the entire period of the little time of trouble. Because we already studied yesterday that during the entire period of the little time of trouble, there was no saint that was ever resurrected in that period of time. Then after the little time of trouble, during the Jacob's trouble, when God delivered the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel, at midnight, according to early writings 285, at the same time, those who died under the fate of the third angel's message, according to the vision, the graves were opened. And those who died under the fate of the third angel's message had been resurrected. So, this is the statement in early writings, page 17, that after they were resurrected, so they were asking the living saints, 144,000, the happenstance, the occurrences during the little time of trouble while they were sleeping. So that is very plain here in early writings, page 17. So, with those passages, brothers and sisters, the subject, the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9 is very broad. So the commencement of the little time of trouble is also called the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. By which in that period of time, there will be only two classes of Sabbath keepers under the banner of the third angel's message. And they are the living saints, 144,000 in number, and all others, they are the living wicked. According to that reading, in 1 Symbolic Code 11 to 12, page 9. So, the half-hour silence, which is the 7 days slaughtering, is the last and the final destruction of all the wicked Sabbath keepers. And that is the reason it is called the general destruction of all the wicked. But that is pointing to only to the Sabbath keepers. So after the 7 days slaughtering, which we commonly understood as the general destruction, general meaning that is the last and the final destruction of all the wicked Sabbath keepers, that after that 7 days slaughtering, general destruction, there will be no more wicked Sabbath keepers that would be in existence. All of them were already dead, completely destroyed. And the only Sabbath keepers that remain are the righteous. Brothers and sisters, although, brothers and sisters, there might be possibility, and not only possibility, but absolute fact, that there must be wicked Sabbath keepers after the 7 days slaughtering, which is the general destruction of all the wicked Sabbath keepers. After that, there are still wicked Sabbath keepers, but they are those who have been especially resurrected. The resurrection in Revelation 1 verse 7. And I think the great controversy called them as the most violent opposers. For example, because that was commenced in the days of Jesus Christ. There are many Sabbath keepers, the Jewish people, who violently opposed the message of Jesus Christ. So let us read first that resurrection. And I think that is great controversy. 637. So, Ezekiel, graves are opened, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And that is also the same with the words of Jesus Christ in John chapter 5. John chapter 5 on verse 28 and 29. Marvel not at this, for the hour is coming, in the which all that are in the grave shall hear his voice, and shall come forth, they that have done good unto the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil unto the resurrection of damnation. So that is mixed resurrection. So let us read again. The Great Controversy, 637. Graves are opened, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Daniel 12 verse 2. All who have died in the faith of the third angel's message come forth from the tomb glorified, to hear God's covenant of peace with those who have kept his law. They also which first him, Revelation 1 verse 7. Those that mocked and derided Christ's dying agonies, and the most violent opposers of his truth, and his people are raised to behold him in his glory, and to see the honor placed upon the loyal and obedient. The Great Controversy, 637. So, that is one of the significance that in the fifth trumpet, vengeance is deferred to grace. But there is a woe pronounced in the fifth trumpet. And that woe is pointing to the wicked, the most violent opposers. They will be especially resurrected to be punished. Now, for example, reading in tract number 5, on page, let's read the statement. Page 58. Having up to this point brought us to the destruction of the first temple and on to the building of the second, the prophetic word of God leads us on now to the first advent of Christ and to his crucifixion. The next great events associated with the trumpets. And these events ushering the Old Testament era out and the new one in. Disclose that the last three trumpets embrace the history of the New Testament period. The woes consequently point first to Satan persecuting the faithful in his endeavor to keep them from embracing Christianity. And second, to his persecuting the heathen in his endeavor to Christianize them. Or generally, if it is pointing to the period of time, the first woe, or we already explained that the last three trumpets are woe trumpets. But each trumpet, there are two woes. There must be two woes under the fifth trumpet. There must be two woes under the sixth trumpet. There must be two woes under the seventh trumpet. Now let us focus first to the two woes under the fifth trumpet, the one we read. The first woe is directed to them who persecuted Christianity. And as far as the shepherd's rod is thus concerned, that is during the period of pagan Rome. Because in the period of papal Rome, he reversed his tactics. So, the statement is very plain. The second woe is that address to that church by which they persecuted the heathen, those who will not accept Christianity. But what kind of Christianity? Paganized. And we know that that church is pointing to the papal church. But how about the first woe that persecuted the apostolic church, the Christian church? That is the Jewish church. Now, here in track number 12, page 43, it says, to begin with, we see from this scripture that the woman left her vineyard, which is the homeland, Palestine, and went into the Gentile world after her child was born. That is in her Christian period. When the dragon persecuted her through the instrumentality of the Jews. Acts chapter 8 verse 1, Acts 13 verse 46, verse 50, and verse 51. Track number 12, page 43. So, I will no longer read any more proofs because it is apparent that the most violent opposers of the apostolic church that vehemently persecuted the apostolic church, the instrument of the dragon is the Jewish church. So, to repeat again, that although during the 7 days slaughtering, all the wicked Sabbath keepers, all of them were completely destroyed. All of them perished in the general destruction of that 5 men bearing slaughtering weapons within 7 days. But immediately after the 7 days slaughtering, there are many wicked Sabbath keepers that will be resurrected. More particularly to the Jewish people, the most violent opposers of the message of Jesus Christ. And many of them are priests and rabbis. So, the wicked Sabbath keepers that had been destroyed by the 5 slaughtering angels was replaced by another wicked Sabbath keepers, those who had been especially resurrected. Now, I would like to read 1 SR. Let me see. 1 SR, page 48 and page 49. He says, there is still another reason why Matthew 27 verse 52 is a type of this mixed resurrection. Remember, type and antitype should exactly fit and perfectly match. Brothers and sisters, answerer number 3, page 23. And also, Great Controversy 399. And 1 is our Pocket Edition, page 73. Who are they that had been resurrected in Matthew 27, verse 52? Let us read first early writings. Here in early writings, on page 184. Early writings, page 184. When Jesus, as he hung upon the cross, cried out, "It is finished." The rocks rent, the earth shook, and some of the graves were opened. When he arose a victor of death over death and the grave, while the earth was reeling and the glory of heaven shone around the sacred spot, many of the righteous dead, obedient to his call, came forth as witnesses that he had risen. Those favored rising saints came forth glorified. They were chosen and holy ones of every age, from creation down even to the days of Christ. Early writings 184. So, that statement plainly tells us that those saints that had been resurrected at the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the term mix, they were selected. Some of them are taken from the righteous from the first seal, the righteous in the second seal, and the righteous on the third seal. So, that is, brothers and sisters, selected according to the voice of inspiration, as well as in early writings 184. Now let us read again 1SR page 48. There is still another reason why Matthew 27 verse 52 is a time of this mixed resurrection. Those who were resurrected with Christ witness of the deity of Christ to the very ones who crucified him. Speaking of this mixed resurrection, Daniel says, "And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt." So, this reading, brothers and sisters, by which the antitype of that mixed resurrection, accordingly, is pointing to Daniel chapter 12. And we know that to the righteous, that is pointing to those who died under the faith of the third angel's message from 1844. But it is even more typifying the resurrection of the wicked, because it is mixed. It is only opposite. Because the mixed resurrection in Matthew 27 verse 52, all of them are righteous. But the term mix is applied as we read the statement in early writings 184, selected from the three generations represented by the first seal, second, and third seal. Some of the righteous had been taken in the period first seal, and some in the period of the second seal, and some in the third seal. We already read in 2SR 221 the commencement and the termination of the seals. First seals covers the entire period from Adam to the flood. Second seal from the flood to Abraham. Third seal from Abraham to Jesus Christ. And the statement in early writing says, even to the days of Jesus Christ. And for sure, the one that had been resurrected, especially resurrected, that reaches to the days of Jesus Christ, it is Demas, the one that had been crucified together with Jesus Christ, by which Jesus Christ promised that He will bring him to paradise. So, he is the last constituent under the third seal that had been selected, that had been especially resurrected. Right? And he is the very one that had been mentioned by Apostle Paul in Second Corinthians. Where's the state? chapter 12. Here Apostle Paul says, verse 2, I knew a man in Christ above 14 years ago. Whether in the body I cannot tell, or whether out of the body I cannot tell. God knoweth. Such an one caught up to the third heaven. And for sure, the man mentioned here is Demas, by which Jesus Christ promised unto him while dying on the cross, he will brought him to paradise. Now, although I no longer remember that verse. When Jesus Christ says that, thou wilt with me in the paradise. Right? When Jesus Christ is hanging on the cross, is it? You can find that. Is it John? Is it in the book of John? Let me see if I could find that verse. When Jesus Christ promised him to be also in the paradise. Luke 23. Let's read. Luke 23 on verse 43. Verse 42. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. Verse 43. And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise. Luke 23, verse 42 and verse 43. So, immediately, his request had been granted, and it was fulfilled by Jesus Christ because he was among of the resurrected ones after Christ's resurrection. Now, let us go back to the statement in 1SR page 48. It says, Then there will be some righteous included who live and witness the crucifixion. Also, those who crucified him and pierced him, for Revelation 1 verse 7, Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him. Therefore the resurrection which witness of the power of God to these murderers of his Son, typified the just who are raised in the mixed spatial resurrection. So the mixed resurrection, let us go first to the wicked. It is also selected those who died under uh, fourth seal, fifth seal, and sixth seal. The same with the type. The righteous that had been resurrected are selected, some from the first seal, some from the second, some from the third. Although, we will study more deeper that even to the special resurrection that pertains to the righteous, according to this reading, let us read again. It says, Daniel says, so that is Daniel 12. Let's read. It says, speaking of this mixed resurrection, Daniel says, 1 SR page 48. Speaking of this mixed resurrection, Daniel says, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Then it says, then there will be some righteous included who live and witness the crucifixion. So the special resurrection in Daniel 12 does not refer alone those who died since 1844. Because type and antitype should exactly fit and perfectly match. If the type, that mixed resurrection, is a selection from the three seals, first, second, third, the antitype, Daniel chapter 12, is also the righteous brothers and sisters that had been selected in the fourth seal, in the fifth seal, and in the sixth seal. We know that the sixth seal, that is those who, the altar. Although Daniel 12 verse 2, Daniel 12 verse 1 and 2 is more particularly pointing to the sixth seal, because in that resurrection, all of them who died under the sixth seal, the righteous, will be resurrected. Not even one will remain in the graves. Unlike with the fourth and the fifth, brothers and sisters, it is only a selection. The rest of those who died under the fourth and the fifth seal will be resurrected at the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. The general resurrection in 1 Thessalonians 4:16 and 17 and Revelation 20 verse 5 and 6. But let us focus first to the special resurrection that belongs to the wicked. And we already read in the Great Controversy 637, it says, the most violent opposers of truth, beginning from Jesus Christ upward. But for sure, they are those who died, the violent opposers under the fourth seal, the violent opposers under the fifth seal, the violent opposers under the sixth seal. They will be especially resurrected because they were so violent, but they had not been punished. Why? Because vengeance is deferred to grace. And that is under the fifth trumpet. Vengeance is deferred to grace. And we already read, brothers and sisters, that since these violent opposers of truth is under the fourth seal, under the fifth seal, and under the sixth seal, indicating also with the three woos, by which each woo or each trumpet, there are two woos. And the first two woos under the fifth trumpet is directly pointing to pagan Rome and papal Rome. What is the first woo? In track number 5, page 59. Directed to them who persecuted the Christian church. We already read, many of them are Sabbath keepers, the Jewish people, violent opposers. So they will be especially resurrected. What is the second woo? Brothers and sisters, the second woo under the fifth trumpet is directed to the dark ages. Those who persecuted the heathen that refused to accept Christianity but paganized Christianity. So they will be especially resurrected. So that is under the fifth seal. But how about the woos under the period of the sixth seal? Brothers and sisters, so we need to study closely so that we could be able to avoid such woo pronounced in the Bible. But since our subject is, we'll discuss that on the subject, the 12 figurative months. But since we focus our attention to that special resurrection pertaining to the wicked, as we have already stated that although that during the 7 days slaughtering, which is called by the shepherd's rod as the general destruction of the wicked, but wicked Sabbath keepers, also quoted from Testimonies for the Church, Volume 3 to 267, I would like to read 1 TG 52:21. Do you, brother, sister, actually comprehend, actually realize the crisis as outlined here? Do you see the production that the sealing message is to be resisted by those who foster the abominations? Are you with them? I hope not. Is there then any question that if the brethren are left ignorant of this cleansing work that God is about to do among His people, I say, if they be left ignorant of it, will they not fall in the general destruction of the wicked, represented by the work of the 5 men bearing slaughter weapons? So, that is pointing to the general destruction. Why is it that it's called general destruction? Because in that destruction, whether you are old, young, infant, without any exemption, brothers and sisters, those who did not receive the seal of the living God, they will be destroyed. But if we continue reading, it says here, obviously, all the sinners in the church will perish. So it is general destruction because all without any exemption, because there is a destruction by which only the firstborn sons will be destroyed. So we will discuss that after this statement. Obviously, all the sinners in the church will perish in this slaughter of the wicked, be they men, women, or children. Parents who continue to serve the devil will have their little ones with them in hell. So in this reading, the salvation of those little ones, whether infant or little children, is depend upon the parents. If the parents will continue to serve the devil, then they will have their little ones with them in hell. And parents who break away from the abominations will have their little ones with them in the kingdom. Where do you stand? Are you with those who have the burden of this work, or are you against them? This, you see, is the decisive hour for you, for me. 1 TG 52 pages 21 and page 22. Now let us continue reading in 1 SR page 48 and 49. The type of the second resurrection, the wicked who come up in the mixed resurrection of Daniel 12 verse 2, and who must die the second death at the coming of Christ, but the second death mentioned here, brothers and sisters, could that be the lake of fire? It is called second death, meaning they died second time. Because the first time they died, then they will be resurrected, then died second time. Because if the second death is referring to the lake of fire, after you died that second death, you will no longer be resurrected. But this wicked that will be resurrected in Daniel 12 verse 2, after the 1,000 years, they will be resurrected again as we continue reading. Now, I would like to read 2 SR 100. Where's the statement saying? There will be no more resurrection from the second death. 2 SR 152 and 153. That is, the beast and the false prophet do not come up in the second resurrection, exemplifying that there is no resurrection from the second death. But the second death mentioned here is the lake of fire. And it is the beast, the one who bear the number 666, together with him, the false prophet, both of them were cast alive into a lake of fire. According to Revelation 19, verse 20 and 21. And after 1,000 years, they will no longer be resurrected because they died the second death, which is the lake of fire. But these resurrected saints, they will be resurrected again after the millennium. Now let us read. The wicked who come up in the mixed resurrection of Daniel 12 verse 2, and who must die the second death at the coming of Christ, typify the ones who come up at the end of the millennium, called the resurrection of the wicked. Read The Great Controversy, pages 661, 662. And other writings, pages 52 and 53. It says, type of the second death. It has been a perplexing question whether the wicked ones who arise in the special resurrection of Daniel 12 verse 2 continue to live or die with the living wicked at the second coming of Christ. So the living wicked mentioned here could no longer be Sabbath keepers, because all the living wicked Sabbath keepers completely destroyed during the 7 days slaughtering. But they must be the living wicked non-Sabbath keepers, and those that have been resurrected and never been categorized as living wicked, because they already dead and then resurrected. It says, it has been a perplexing question whether the wicked ones who arise in the special resurrection of Daniel 12 verse 2 continue to live or die with the living wicked at the second coming of Christ and be resurrected at the end of the 1,000 years. As God leaves nothing undone, He has foretold everything in prophecy and types as well. If we have a type for every other event, we must have a type of this. The wicked ones who are resurrected must die with the rest of the wicked at the coming of Christ in the clouds to typify the second death at the end of the millennium. Now the question is, will they arise again in the second resurrection with the wicked? In answer to this question, early writings, page 292. At the first resurrection, all come forth in immortal bloom, but at the second, the marks of the curse are visible on all. The kings and noblemen of the earth, the men and low and learned and unlearned, come forth together. All behold the Son of Man. And those very men who despise and mock him, who put the crown of thorns upon his sacred brow, and smote him with the reed, behold him in all his kingly majesty. Those who spit upon him in the hour of his trial now turn from his piercing gaze and from the glory of his countenance. Those who drove the nails through his hands, the feet, now look upon the marks of his crucifixion. Those who thrust the spear into his side, behold the marks of their cruelty on his body. By this we understand that these very men are there again in the second resurrection. Therefore, they were resurrected the second time. So, they had been resurrected second time. At the end of the 1,000 years, to die in the second death, which they themselves typified by dying the second death with the living wicked at the second coming of Christ in the clouds. Thus, we have a prophecy and a type for every event that has or will take place in this wicked world of ours. One is page 48 and page 49. So, according to that reading, the voice of inspiration is plainly telling us that those who have been resurrected in the special resurrection, the wicked, brothers and sisters, they will remain alive up to the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. And all of them will die with the brightness of the coming of our Lord. To repeat again, although all the living wicked, all the living wicked Sabbath keepers, all of them were destroyed, perished on the general destruction of all the wicked Sabbath keepers, which is the 7 days slaughtering. But immediately after all of them were destroyed, brothers and sisters, the wicked Sabbath keepers will be resurrected again. Who are they? The most violent opposers. Beginning from Christ, beginning from the 4th seal, then 5th seal, and 6th seal. So let us go back again to our reading. Therefore, the statement in 1 Symbolic Code number 11 and 12, page 9, is applied to both time of trouble. That at the commencement of the little time of trouble, the only Sabbath keepers that remain are only 2 classes. Living saints, Sabbath keepers, and living wicked, Sabbath keepers. But at the great time of trouble, brothers and sisters, is also the same. The Sabbath keepers that remain at that time are 2 classes. Although righteous and wicked, right? During the great time of trouble, there must be living saints, Sabbath keepers, living saints, resurrected saints, Sabbath keepers. Those who died under the faith of the third angel's message since 1844. But there are also wicked Sabbath keepers. Who are they? Those that had been especially resurrected. So, that is the difference between the little time of trouble and the great time of trouble. In error writings, page 33 and page 34, the little time of trouble, the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel, did not as yet reach Mount Zion. Whereas in the great time of trouble, the 144,000 living saints were already on Mount Zion. They were already delivered and brought to Mount Zion. In the little time of trouble, there was no saint that were ever resurrected. But in the great time of trouble, the saints who died under the faith of the third angel's message were already resurrected. So, but in the great time of trouble onwards, or immediately after the 7 days slaughtering, the general destruction of all the wicked Sabbath keepers, that is the climactic event of Ezekiel chapter 9. Or in other words, after the 7 days slaughtering, we can declare that Ezekiel 9 is completely fulfilled. So the occurrence after the 7 days slaughtering, the general destruction of all the wicked Sabbath keepers, could no longer be called as a part of Ezekiel 9. So Ezekiel 9 is only up to the 7 days slaughtering, or the general destruction of all the wicked Sabbath keepers. Now let us read 2SR. To repeat again, brothers and sisters, it is high time now that we need to place the exact fulfillment of its statement called by the shepherd's rod the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. The rod must be interpreted by the rod itself. And you cannot read that statement with any other writings except the shepherd's rod alone. The statement, the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. Now, let us connect our study in 2SR 162. So, let us read this statement. 2SR 162. And 2SR page 162. It says, the cases of all who are sealed from 1929 to the final close of provision will be investigated before the throne in the heavenly sanctuary while living. So, again, I would like to quote that statement in 1 TG 13:7 saying, our duty is to prove God's word correct. So, we need to always stand in that position. 1 TG 13 page 7, our duty is to prove God's word correct rather than to hold tenaciously to our preconceptions and misconceptions until God Himself steps in and put us to shame. And I would like to quote that statement, improvise. Let me see. First in answerer number 1. On page 47, it says, inspiration makes clear that the Lord's messenger dare not in any way improvise upon revelation. How do we define the word improvise? Let us define first the word improvise. So let us project the word improvise. Because the voice of inspiration says, another meaning, and that is not the only meaning of the word improvise. I think that is not the only meaning of the word improvise. The word improvise is the only meaning, saying to produce or create. So let's go back again to answerer. Answerer number 1, page 47. And let us connect track number 5, page 6 and 7. Any explanation of a prophecy which adds to or takes from any part of relevant scripture in order to harmonize the interpretation can only be false. When the Spirit of God interprets the scriptures, He does not in any way need to alter any part of them in order to make the explanation fit that which is being unfolded. When, moreover, the true interpretation of a prophecy is made, it always contains a lesson of present truth, adapted to the necessities of God's people. Track number 5, page 6 and page 7. So, let's go back again to 2SR 162. And we need to explain this statement in 2SR 162 in harmony with all the entire Shepherd's Rod publications, right? In answerer number 3, page 41, saying that the inviolable rule of interpretation is to harmonize all other related statements. So let us read 2SR page 162. The cases of all who are sealed from 1929 to the final close of provision will be investigated before the throne in the heavenly sanctuary while living. Then it says, the investigation commences after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. So Ezekiel 9, or the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9, is involved in this reading. Now, brothers and sisters, since we are admonished that inspiration, they're not in any way improvised upon revelation or whatever unfoldment of the scriptures, according to track number 5, page 6 and 7, no, it does not alter, brothers and sisters, the inspired records. And I do not stand on that foundation by some Davidian, by which at the time when they will have a hard time to explain that paragraph, and according to their finite understanding, it seems contradictory. They immediately jump to the conclusion by saying that B.T. Hotep has no light at that time. And that is the reason that he wrote that statement. Because I do fully believe, brothers and sisters, the statement in 2SR on page 13 saying, when God reveals truth, He is able to lead His servants in all truth and does not allow such instruments to mix His truth with error. Though they may not understand all, yet the message they bear is the truth and nothing but the truth. 2SR page 13. And I applied this statement in the Shepherd's Rod publications, that I don't believe, brothers and sisters, that there is error in the Shepherd's Rod publications. Although, I do fully believe that there are false expectations of the prophet. Brothers and sisters, let us distinctly separate the expectation of the prophet and the teaching of the prophet. When it comes to the teaching, there is no error. But when it comes to the expectation, there are false expectations of the prophet. And we can enumerate one by one. For example, John the Baptist. He expected that the kingdom to be established by the Messiah is the kingdom of glory. That is false expectation. Sister White, she expected that the sealing of the 144,000 commenced in her lifetime. That is false expectation. And the same with B.T. Hotep. And that is why Sister White and B.T. Hotep, both of them admonish their followers that whatever false expectation, let's read again the statement in 7 Symbolic Code, 7 to 12, page 19, saying, my conclusion is that we should give up no scripture truth, but that our false applications and interpretations of Scripture and consequent false ideas of order and propriety should be given up as fast as possible. So, both Sister White and B.T. Hotep, they were aware to that absolute fact, the possibility that they obtained false expectations. Although, we studied it several times in 1SR 122 that it is represented as the cow's dung. Permitted by God, allowed by God for the sake of the prophet. And that is the reason why the cow's dung is a part of the ceremonial system, brothers and sisters. So, in 1SR 124, and we enumerated one by one, Exodus 29:14, Leviticus 4:11, Leviticus 8:17, Leviticus 16:27 and Numbers 19 verse 5. Cow's dung is a part of this sacred services. Now let us read again 2SR 162. It says here, the cases of all who are sealed from 1929 to the final close of provision will be investigated before the throne in the heavenly sanctuary while living. And since it is the shepherd's rod that admonishes us that grammatical rule is observed or followed in the scriptures, it says here in 2SR 118, this grammatical rule is followed in the scriptures, and it is one way to recognize present truth. So, grammatical rule is followed in the scriptures, and at the same time, it is one way to recognize present truth. In 1SR 244, it says, it is wonderful to note the inspiration of the scriptures. Perfect they are when their appointed time is come. Only at such an occasion are the scriptures grammatically correct. So, if that is the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy, we can rest assured that the application of the scripture must be grammatically correct, according to our reading. Now, the shepherd's rod, because we need to explain the shepherd's rod with the shepherd's rod itself. The shepherd's rod explained that the word while, here in tract number 9, page 10, while the earth remaineth, moreover promises the Lord, seed time and harvest and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Genesis 8 verse 22. The words while the earth remaineth, expressly denoting limitation of time. Yes, that is the true meaning of the word while. So the word while expressly denoting limitation of time. So the statement while living cannot be applied to the saints that will no longer to taste death. The statement while living must be applied only to the saints who are destined to die. So, the statement is very plain that there are saints to be investigated in the heavenly sanctuary while living before the throne. Their cases in the heavenly sanctuary were investigated while they were still alive, while living. Now, here's another statement in 2SR. And we'll be digging deeper and deeper, brothers and sisters. And I know God would help us. 2SR page 217. Now let me read to you the statement. They who are to be sealed at that time were seen by John as a great multitude with palms in their hands. See Revelation 7 verse 9. Of course, the great multitude, the second fruits, they are the saints that will no longer to taste death. Now, brothers and sisters, although we will repeat it again and again in every other subject, for example, the 12 figurative months, but to make it more clearer, I would like first to inform all the serious Bible student that the great multitude is divided into three classes. The great multitude to be converted during the Great Tribulation. The great multitude to be converted during the little time of trouble. And the great multitude to be converted during the great time of trouble. Only in the great time of trouble by which you can apply the statement, no man can number. Because who are they? The constituent of the great multitude to be converted during the Great Tribulation. I will no longer read, but I would like to give to you the passages. In tract number 9, page 56, they are they who are not defiled with women. Because according to that reading, the whole paragraph in tract number 9, page 56, the great multitude are categorized by two classes, defiled with women, and the other is not defiled with women. And in that reading, it says it is the Jews. And we already explained it, I think, in our previous episode. They are the type mentioned in 2 TG 43:23 and 24 to be converted after the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel, will be completely sealed. And according to tract number 5, here in tract number 5 on page 110 and 111, let's read the statement. But why leave out the court? Why not measure it also? For since it is a part of the building, it too must be symbolical of saints. Obviously, because it represents the great multitude which no man could number, measure, of all nations, and kindreds, and peoples, and tongues. Revelation 7, verse 9. The last who come from among the Gentiles, the court, in other words, is symbolical of the immeasurable, innumerable harvest of second fruits brought in after the measurable or the numerable harvest of first fruits, the 144,000. It is not measured, meaning investigated, because it represents those among whom there are no bad to be cast out, for they are gathered in after the cleansing of the heavenly temple, Daniel 8 verse 14, after the judgment of the dead, after the separation of the bad from among the good, in the church as illustrated by the parable of the net, Matthew 13 verse 47 and 48, They are those who by name, my people, Revelation 18:4, are called to come out of Babylon, and who with no unclean among them, Isaiah 52 verse 1, come into the already purified and living church of God. Who are they? The great multitude by which, by name, God called them my people. So let us connect to track number 4. It says here, page 12, the same pair of children introduced in the first chapter of the vision are in the second chapter redenominated. The difference being that from both names is dropped the prefix lo, which in the Hebrew means no. Accordingly, whereas lo rohama means no mercy, and lo amai not my people, rohama means mercy, and amai my people. So what does it mean by who by name called my people? That is amai. And who are they? They are the Jewish people. So, brothers and sisters, after the 144,000 are completely sealed, then God will then reaccept, as stated in Romans chapter 11, and also explained here in, let us read, track number 8, page 12. Hearing Christ's teachings, then rejecting them and crucifying him, the Jewish nation brought upon their heads the doom which God pronounced upon them, when through his prophet he declared, Ye are not my people, and I will not be your God. Though at the same time in his great mercy he let the promise be written, in the place where it was said unto them, Ancient Israel, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, Ancient Israel, ye are the sons of the living God. And it is pointing to the time when they will be reaccepted again as God's people. And we already explained, brothers and sisters, that this Israel, not under the banner of the third influence age, which is pointing to the literal Israel, in reality divided into two classes. To the 12 tribes by which they lost the racial identity when they became Christians, and to the 2 tribes which preserved the racial identity. The 2 tribes that preserved their racial identity at this present time, the righteous among them must be represented by the root in God's kingdom, as also stated in track number 8, page 86. And they are those, the righteous will be left after that trouble in the Middle East as fulfillment of Zechariah 14. So the righteous mentioned in 1 TG number 19 on page 4, saying, As the warring nations besiege the city and rifle the houses, also ravish the women, they are by no means righteous nations. But since not all the inhabitants go into captivity, and since all are not cut off from the city, it must be that the wicked are taken away and the righteous left in to join the house of Judah. The house of Judah mentioned here is pointing to the spiritual Israel. So the righteous that had been left, that is pointing to the literal Jews by which according to tract number 9 on page 50, he says, though the early Christian church was made up purely of Jews, yet as they began to be called Christians, the new Jewish sect, in contradistinction to Jews, the old Jewish sect, they gradually lost the racial distinctiveness until finally they altogether ceased to be called Jews. Whereas throughout the centuries, the non-Christian Jews have preserved intact their racial identity. And that is the present Jewish people in Palestine today. But for sure, there are righteous among them. And I do fully believe, as stated in tract number 8 on page, let's read the statement. Page 83, tract number 8. For if the first fruit, the Jew, be holy, the lump, Jew and Gentile, is also holy. And if the root, the Jew, be holy, so are the branches. So, the statement, Jacob will take root downward and bear fruit upward, then in that statement, we can easily understand that the root are those righteous Jewish people that preserve their racial identity even to this present time. But according here in 11 Symbolic Code, number 7, page 18, Isaiah 27, verse 6, it says, He shall cause them that come of Jacob to take root, Israel shall blossom and bud, and fill the face of the world with fruit. Those that come of Jacob will take root. It implies that not all are coming, but those that do come will take root. The others will die. So it points out, brothers and sisters, to the Jewish people in the Middle East. The others will die, but those who will be left, the righteous, they must be represented by the root, as stated in tract number 8, page 83. Then it says, those that take root are of Jacob. We all know that the scriptures say that the 144,000 are all of Jacob, for they are Israelites. The verse we are now studying says that those that come of Jacob shall take root, and Israel shall blossom and grow and fill the face of the world with fruit. These words are so plain, they do not need interpretation. Using the analogy that an apple tree bears apples and not plums or something else, we may draw the lesson that the Israelites that take root, the 144,000, will bring forth converts to Israel. These converts will be Israelites either by birth or by being grafted in, as Paul describes in Romans chapter 11. So the term Israel's by birth, that is, brothers and sisters, pointing to the Jewish people that preserve the racial identity intact. But concerning, brothers and sisters, the one that have been grafted, it says here in 2TG number 6, on page 16, plainly then, I am reading the last portion. Plainly then, many who are taken as Gentiles are but
unidentified descendants of ancient Judah and Israel, and the Jewish Christians. So, it is the unidentified descendants of ancient Judah and Israel who accept Christianity, and the racial identity had been loosed out according to the reading. Although I will not focus much on that portion, but I am only trying to make our study even more easier by categorizing the constituent of the great multitude. The first constituent of the great multitude are all Sabbath keepers, those who had been converted during the Great Tribulation. So, the loud cry proclamation during the Great Tribulation is directed only to all Sabbath keepers. But the Sabbath keepers not under the banner of the third angel's message, because the Sabbath keepers under the banner of the third angel's message, their probation closed even before the Great Tribulation commenced. And that is also the fulfillment of that vision of Sister White. I would like to read. And Testimonies for the Church, volume 9, page 97. But it was quoted here in the old symbolic code. To symbolic code number 12, page 8. To symbolic code number 12, page 8. So let us read the statement. Sorrow to one, joy to another. Question number 140. Please give us light on the following testimony, or that the people might know the time of their visitation. The time of God's destructive judgments is the time of mercy for those who have had no opportunity to learn what is truth. Tenderly will the Lord look upon them. His heart of mercy is touched. His hand is still stretched out to save, while the door is closed to those who would not enter. Testimonies for the Church, volume 9, page 97. This is the answer. The above testimony shows that God is to manifest His destructive judgments before the close of provision. So that is very plain. But let us apply the close of provision here to the close of provision of all Sabbath keepers. He says, the above testimony shows that God is to manifest His destructive judgments before the close of provision. For at that time, He will be merciful to those who have had no opportunity to learn what is truth. His hand is still stretched out to save. Moreover, it also proves that at the same time, the doors probation had closed to those who would not enter. To symbolic code number 12, page 8. And I know every Davidian is cognizant to the fact that provisionary time will close first to the Sabbath keepers under the banner of the third angel's message, or we commonly called as the spiritual Israel. Now to repeat again, in track number 5, 110 and 111, in that reading, very clear that the very first constituent of the great multitude to be converted are those people who by name God called them my people. we already read that the third my people, that is Amai. Track number 4, page 12. And Amai is pointing to the Jewish people. And it is perfectly corroborating to the statement in track number 9, page 56, that the constituent of the great multitude comprises defiled and undefiled. But in that reading, the undefiled ones, they are the Jews. Also stated in track number 3, page 72, that the second fruits comprises defiled and undefiled, brothers and sisters. And for sure, that is exactly fits to typify Enoch, because Enoch is a Sabbath keeper. And Enoch is undefiled. So, if it comes to type and antitype, the only portion of the great multitude that typify Enoch are the constituent of the great multitude, which is the undefiled ones, and they were Sabbath keepers. So, to repeat again, brothers and sisters, the very first loud cry proclamation that is addressed or directed to the great multitude which no man could number, that is during the great tribulation mentioned in Revelation 7 verse 14. The great tribulation. And the only constituent of the great multitude that will pass the great tribulation are the Sabbath keepers. Because it is also called by the jumpers rod as Jacob's trouble. So here in 2SR page, 2SR page 100, I think 166, it says, 2SR 166, therefore, this great multitude, 2SR 166, therefore, this great multitude is gathered from all nations after the closing work for the church and in the time of the great harvest. The palms in their hands signified victory over the beast and his image, death and the grave. One of the elders before the throne said of them, these are they which came out of great tribulation, the time of Jacob's trouble. So since this great multitude, they will experience the time of Jacob's trouble, then for sure, brothers and sisters, they must be Sabbath keepers. The one we read in 11 Symbolic Code number 7, page 18. Because Sunday keepers never categorized as Jacob or Jacobites, brothers and sisters. So the great multitude that will experience the great tribulation in Revelation 7 verse 14 are pertaining to all the righteous Sabbath keepers. Therefore, that Jacob's trouble, which consists literal 7 days, exactly 7 days, does not refer to the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel alone. Because concerning the antitypical spiritual Israel, or the spiritual Israel, 144,000 living saints, their trouble will only one night decisive blow. But there are 7 days, Jacob's trouble. So the other days, remaining days, is already intended, brothers and sisters, to that Sabbath keepers, not under the banner of the third angel's message. Right? So, Now, let us go back again. For example, here in, uh, I think 1SR. 1SR page, um, track number 9 rather, I think, track number 9. Track number 9 on page, I think page 63. It says here, track number 9, page 69. Track number 9, page 69. From this, the truth is against sin, that the first and the second fruits of the living, the one gathered from within the church at the commencement of the great and dreadful day, and the other gathered out of Babylon during that day, constituted the kingdom of its beginning, and before the resurrection of the dead. Now, brothers and sisters, this statement that the great multitude to be gathered before the resurrection of the dead, that is the great multitude to be converted first during the great tribulation, and second during the little time of trouble. Because after the resurrection of the dead, pointing to Daniel 12:2, the mere fact that Sister White or all the resurrected saints under the banner of the third angel's message, they will proclaim the message during the loud cry proclamation in the great time of trouble. So, that great multitude is converted after the resurrection of the dead. But the statement says that there is a constituent of the great multitude by which they had been gathered before the resurrection of the dead. And that two events before the resurrection of the dead is the great tribulation and the little time of trouble. Now, during the great tribulation, we already explained that the message that had been proclaimed at that time is addressed only to all Sabbath keepers, not under the banner of the third angel's message. The membership of the Seventh-day Adventist Church today, I think, more or less, they might be 27 million or 28 million. But during the Great Tribulation, at the time when the false prophet will make fire to come down from heaven, brothers and sisters, majority, large number of the Seventh-day Adventist Church will abandon their position of being Sabbath keepers. They will give up Sabbath and they will join to the Sunday-keeping Christians. And that is the reason why when Sister White saw in her vision that there are Seventh-day Adventists that will receive the 7 plagues. But that 7 plagues is the symbolical plagues. And who are they that will receive that 7 plagues, which is symbolical? They are those who keep the Sabbath but give it up. Now, I would like to read the great controversy. It says here in the great controversy. Here the voice of inspiration says that As the storm approaches, let me see if I could find that statement. A large company who profess, brothers and sisters, are faith in the third angel's message, 608, I think 608, abandon their position, 608 in the great controversy. As the storm approaches, a large class who have professed faith in the third angel's message, so it must be applied only to the Sabbath keepers under the banner of the third angel's message. As the storm approaches, a large class who have professed faith in the third angel's message, but have not been sanctified through obedience to the truth, abandon their position and join the ranks of the opposition. By uniting with the world and partaking of its spirit, they have come to view matters in nearly the same light. And when the test is brought, and the test mentioned here, if we will read the writings of Alonzo Jones, it is pointing to the time when the false prophet will let fire to come down from heaven. And I will read to you that statement. When the test is brought, they are prepared to choose the easy, popular side. Men of talent and pleasing address, who once rejoiced in the truth, employ their powers to deceive and mislead souls. They become the most bitter enemies of their former brethren. So, you see, become bitter enemies. Therefore, these people will be especially resurrected because they are among the most violent opposers. When Sabbath keepers are brought before the courts to answer for their faith, these apostates are the most efficient agents of Satan to misrepresent and accuse them, and by false reports and insinuation to stir up the rulers against them. The Great Controversy, page 608. And in early writings, let us read, it says, in the vision of the prophet, early writings, page 36 and 37. I saw that the four angels would hold the four winds until Jesus' work was done in the sanctuary, and then will come the 7 last plagues. So we need to study closely because the work of Christ mentioned here is in the holy place, not in the most holy place. Brothers and sisters. Now, it says, and then will come the 7 last plagues. These plagues enraged the wicked against the righteous. They thought that we had brought the judgments of God upon them, and that if they could rid the earth of us, the plagues would then be stayed. So it is pointing to the little time of trouble. You remember the plagues during the little time of trouble? The same description in early writings. Here in 1 SR, let us read. Page 36 and page 37. So you can read the entire pages. But to minimize time, I would like to read only the first sentence. As an illustration and comparison of the faithfulness and unity of the people at the time of trouble during the plagues, we quote early writings, page 282 and 283. So during the plagues, the time of trouble mentioned here is the little time of trouble. By which, at this time, when the plagues are poured out, Jesus Christ is still in the most holy place. Whereas, the literal 7 last plagues, it will be poured out, Jesus Christ was no longer in the most holy place. Now, let us continue reading. It says, these plagues enraged the wicked against the righteous. They thought that we had brought the judgments of God upon them, and that if they could rid the earth of us, the plagues would then be stayed. A decree went forth to slay the saints, which caused them to cry day and night for deliverance. So these occurrences cannot be pointing to the 7 literal plagues. Because at that time, there is no more prophecy that the saints are crying day and night for deliverance, because they had been delivered long time before the 7 plagues literal had been poured out. And then it says, this was the time of Jacob's trouble. And we know that that is the 7 days, half hour silence. Then all the saints cried out with anguish of spirit and were delivered by the voice of God. You can read early writings 285, right? Saying it was at midnight that God chose to deliver His people. The 144,000 triumphed. Their faces were lighted up with the glory of God. Then I was shown a company who were howling in agony. On their garments was written in large characters, Thou art weighed in the balance and found wanting. Who are they? That is the Seventh-day Adventist Church, right? If you will read Testimonies for the Church, Volume 8, 247, let's read. Volume 8, page 247, it says, In the balances of the sanctuary, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is to be weighed. She will be judged by the privileges and advantages that she has had. If her spiritual experience does not correspond to the advantages that Christ at infinite cost has bestowed on her, if the blessings conferred have not qualified her to do the work entrusted to her, on her will pronounce the sentence, found wanting. By the light bestowed, the opportunities given, will she be judged. Volume 8, page 247. Now let us go back to early writings, page 37. It says, Then I was shown a company who were howling in agony. On their garments was written in large characters, Thou art weighed in the balance and found wanting. I asked who this company were. The angel said, These are they who have once kept the Sabbath and have given it up. So that is pointing to the Seventh-day Adventist Church, by which large number, in reality, that number 28 million, the one that will remain is less than 1 million. Brothers and sisters. So, we need to study closely this prophecy, and we know that that event is at the time when the false prophet will let fire come down from heaven. So that is the statement we read in the Great Controversy 608, and it is called the final test. So I would like to to read here in Image to the Beast. It says, let's read the statement. The 13th verse I think I would like to read first the statement then. So this is statement. Now, that test comes again. the test in the days of Elijah, remember? It says, I would like to read first the upper portion of the statement. It says, I would like to read the upper portion. It says, now are these miracles wrought openly and above board, distinctly as against the Lord? Is that what they pretended to do? The congregation answered no. And then it says, are they wrought by those who openly and professedly deny Jesus Christ? Congregation answered no. Who then? Those who profess themselves to be Christ. The Bible declared false Christ will arise and shall show great signs and wonders. That is in Matthew 24:24. This will be done by those who themselves profess that they are representatives of Jesus Christ and that Jesus Christ is with them and that God is the God of that side of the question. But it will be denied and it will be known that it is not so by those who know the Lord. But this challenge will be made. There was a contest once as to whether the Lord was God or whether the Son was God, Baal. The test which decided that day amongst the people that Elijah was a man of God and that God was the true God and not the Son, not Baal. That test was fire came down from heaven. So, we need to study closely this event, brothers and sisters, because we are on the very fulfillment of that event. Without any doubts, I do fully believe that this coronavirus, COVID-19, is already the fulfillment of the prophecy. Now, for example, I would like to read to you. Let me see if I could find that statement in the voice of inspiration. Because we need also to observe the current events that may fulfill prophecy. Remember that statement in track number 12? Current events that may fulfill prophecy. And of course, the prominent current events at this present time is this coronavirus, right? And I think everybody is suffering. Every nation is suffering with this so-called coronavirus. But there is a prediction, brothers and sisters. We need not forget that there is a prediction recorded in the voice of inspiration. And I would like to read this reading. These working miracles by A.T. Jones. These propositions are worthy of most serious consideration. They are not only the truth, but they are the truth for these times. But this statement, in reality, is intended in our days, rather than in their days, because it was not really realized. This occurrences, brothers and sisters. So, I would like to read again. It says, these propositions are worthy of most serious consideration. They are not only the truth, but they are the truth for these times. For it is certain that diseases are multiplying upon the earth. Now, this declaration of Alonzo Jones is corroborating to that prediction in the writings of Sister White that Satan will spread a deadly poison on the air by which it seems that all the people in the world will sorry, I forget the statement in the Great Controversy. I think 588 and 589. But I would like to go immediately to the statement. He imparts to the air, that is Satan. 589 in the Great Controversy. He imparts to the air a deadly taint, and 1,000 perish by the pestilence. Now, it is a prediction, brothers and sisters, that I do fully believe that this statement in the Great Controversy is now fulfilling. Now, let me read to you the statement. These propositions are worthy of most serious consideration. They are not only the truth, but they are the truth for these times. For it is certain that diseases are multiplying upon the earth and will multiply. So the offered remedies and means of removing them will multiply. And this is really happening today because millions of dollars have been expended just to find out the remedy of this COVID-19. So it says here, brothers and sisters, that for it is certain that diseases are multiplying upon the earth and will multiply, so the offered remedies and means of removing them will multiply. And as we have stated before in these columns, this is one of the chief things employed by Satan in getting power over the people in his war against the church of God. Brothers and sisters, so we need to observe what is happening today, brothers and sisters. Right? It says, there are thousands of persons today. Now let us apply this reading in our days. There are thousands of persons today who have diseases and who so long to get rid of them that they will willingly apply anything that gives them the promise of doing away with the disease without asking any questions as to any consequences. The only question with them is, how can I get rid of this? And in the quickest way. There are thousands of persons who are diseased. Persons who have brought disease upon themselves by their wrong methods of living, and who will adapt and give themselves up to anything that will relieve them of the suffering, rather than to set about a rational, conscientious course to correct their manner of living so that the disease may go. Those persons need not expect anything else than they will fall under the deceptive power of the enemy, who by curing or apparently curing their bodies gets a hold upon both soul and body that nothing but the power of God himself can break. Then why not have God to deliver them at the first, simply because the way of the Lord is not the thing of supreme importance with them. So that is the prediction, brothers and sisters. The time will come when there is no more remedy with these diseases except by miracle. And Satan will perform miracle through the medium of the false prophet, brothers and sisters. Now, I would like to read this reading. It says, one thing especially to be noted about these things is that they will be real miracles. You see? The miracles performed by the false prophet is genuine. Real miracles. The disease completely gone. These false Christs and false prophets shall show, not simply pretend to show, but shall show great signs and wonders. Those miracles which he had power to do, not simply that he pretended to have power to do, they are the spirits of devils working miracles. Not simply pretending to work miracles. The false prophet that wrote miracles, not the false prophet that pretended to work miracles. And that is the only way that he can gain advantage against the church of God, against the people of God, because in doctrinal points, he can gain no advantage. And when the time will come, brothers and sisters, that the false prophet perform miracles to heal the disease of the people, those who will declare that it is not of God, he will make a challenge. The same as in the days of Elijah. That prophet, he will claim that he is antitypical Elijah that is by. And he will propose a challenge according to this reading. Now it says, let us continue reading. Now that test comes again. But this time it will be done to deceive. And it will be done by those who claim now to be Baals, or rather those who are really Baal's servants, but profess that Baal is God, which is Satan, of course. And they will present that challenge to you and me. Now you say that the Bible is the Word of God. You stand on that? Yes. Yes, sir. You say that God is your God? Yes, sir. And that the Sabbath ought to be kept because that is the sign of what God is to man and what Christ is to man. Yes, sir. That is the position exactly. Now, a test was put once before, which decided this question. That was that fire come down from heaven, that decided there that the Lord was the true God. Who is the true God? The God of the Sabbath or the God of Sunday? There is a challenge. Now we offer you, upon your own proposition, today, the same challenge. We say to you that we challenge you to this decision. We give you an open, fair challenge. We say to you now, if we are the men of God, if God is our God and not yours, if we are men of God, let fire come down from heaven upon the earth. So that prediction in Revelation 13, that the false prophet will let fire come down from heaven. No, it is not just he will display fire to come down from heaven, but that is only predicting that at the time when this working miracles, healing the diseases of the people, those people will oppose, saying that such miracles did not come from God. The false prophet will make a challenge and he will claim that he was antitypical Elijah the Tishbite. And in that challenge, he will challenge all Sabbath keepers to prove who is the true God. And after that fire come down from heaven, the post-prophet will predict the second visible coming of Jesus Christ, but it will be fulfilled by Satan, and Satan will declare, I have changed the Sabbath to Sunday. And there is no other solution but death decree to kill all Sabbath keepers because they were disobedient to the word of the Lord according to them. Brothers and sisters, now let me continue reading this statement. It says, the 13th verse, it says, the 13th verse, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire to come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Is that fulfilled before the image of the beast is made? Congregation answered no. We all know, who have read volume 4, that is one of the last thing that is ever done before Satan comes himself, personally. So before Satan will come himself personally, impersonating Jesus Christ, and the graves will be open, and those who died, the fallen angels will imitate their faces, the tone of their voice. And what if, at that time, Sister White and Betty Hotep also will be resurrected, but that is not genuine Betty Hotep. That is not genuine Sister White. Because without any doubts, those people that the devil will imitate must be those people that had been regarded as spiritual benefactors of different religion, by which they respected so much. And we will read to you in Testimonies Volume 1. And accordingly, in this reading, this is the last event before Satan will come, impersonating Jesus Christ. Brothers and sisters. And I think there is a statement in 2SR saying that the post-prediction of the post-prophet will be fulfilled by Satan. I think 2SR, that is in 2SR, the post-prediction of the post-prophet will be fulfilled by Satan. Because the post-prophet will predict the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. And it will be fulfilled by Satan himself. Or it might be also in the writing of Sister White. I could no longer remember. 2SR 157. Let us read this thing. 2SR page 157, saying, his false prediction of the coming of the Lord will be fulfilled by Satan himself as he appears as an angel of light. But that prediction of the post-prophet is after he let fire come down from heaven. Now let us go back to the reading. And the writings of Alonzo Jones, it says, and you who have not read it, just read it. And you will see that the making of the fire to come down from heaven is one of the last things that are done before Satan appears personally or after taking the most extreme view possible of it. It is among those things that are carried on when the very powers of the satanic agencies are exerted to their full extent to deceive, if possible, the very elect. This miracle is wrought to prove to the children of God that they are wrong in keeping the Sabbath. This miracle is wrought as deciding test, and it will be one of the very last things before the decree goes forth to put peoples to death. If not the very last before that, it will be one of the last. The contest will be between the powers of the earth and the Lord, between those who yield and obey the powers of the earth and those who obey the Lord. So, that is the occurrences, brothers and sisters. Then after the fire come down from heaven, let us read. And what then? And what then? Fire comes. He doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Men will see it, and it is done to decide this question, to decide that they are the people of God, the Sunday keepers, that they are men of God. And when the true people of God say that that is not the test, that does not prove anything, then you see, they will say, well, you go back on your own evidences. You say you believe the Bible. You say that that is your foundation, and you agree that that decided this question once. Yes, sir, but now, when we do the same thing, you deny that that is any decision at all. What is the use of reasoning anymore with such men as that? They all go back on the plainest evidence that they themselves say that they stand upon. What more could be done but to kill such a people as that? You can't reason with them anymore. And the fate of the world, the plagues and pestilences, and all these things are coming upon the people on account of your grace, because you will not surrender or yield. You are stubborn. You will have it your own way anyway. So, you see, brothers and sisters, after fire come down from heaven, the people will no longer listen to any reasoning, because they were fully convinced that the religion of the false prophet is the true religion. And that is called the wholesale deception. Here in 2SR page 100. Let's read 2SR page 153. The time of that wholesale deception is at hand. It will take more than great knowledge of theology to escape the most powerful trap His satanic majesty has ever devised. The wonderful miracles will be convincing, and the apparently genuine spirit of worship will bring deep conviction upon those who are subject to be misled. And as the great men of the world declare its worship true, multitudes will accept their decisions without personal investigation. Add to all of this the following declaration of civil authorities: as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And we have an overwhelming power which human strength cannot resist for a moment. Only by a prophetic knowledge of the truth with confidence on that set the Lord, and in the power of His Spirit, can one escape the wily snares of the devil. This statement, brothers and sisters, is applied after the false prophet let fire come down from heaven. And to them, that is the antitypical fulfillment in the days of Elijah to prove that who is the true God. And at the time when the false prophet let fire come down from heaven, multitude will fully believe that that prophet is the true prophet of God. Although we know that he is the false prophet, brothers and sisters, because he will let fire to come down from heaven in Washington, D.C., in the sight of the beast, in the Capitol Palace. And that's why place is very important. Because Elijah let fire come down from heaven in Mount Carmel. And there is no Mount Carmel in Washington, D.C. So, if someone will say, why is it that the true people of God did not accept the challenge? Because if you will accept the challenge, then will God answer your prayer to let fire come down from heaven? By which the only prediction recorded in the Bible to let fire come down from heaven in the sight of the beast in Capitol Palace in Washington, D.C. is the false prophet? There is a prediction, brothers and sisters. If that event will be repeated again in the days of Elijah, so it must be the same place. It was in Mount Carmel that Elijah let fire come down from heaven, not in Washington, D.C. Now, here in 1 SR page 243, it says, Mount Carmel is where Elijah had experience with the backslidden Israel in the days of Ahab. It was in Carmel where Elijah, brought the fire from heaven, which consumed the sacrifice upon the altar, after which he slew the prophets of Baal. 1 SR page 243. The question is these occurrences will be repeated again? If it will be repeated again, is it literal that the fire came down from heaven? So we need to study closely, brothers and sisters. But what I'm trying to emphasize at this time, that the one that will let fire come down from heaven in the Capitol Palace in the sight of the beast, as stated in Revelation 13:12-18, is the false prophet, not the prophet of God. So only those who have prophetic knowledge or who have knowledge of prophetic truth can escape the wily snares of the devil. But the reason that I mentioned that event is just to emphasize that after the false prophet let fire come down from heaven, majority of the Sabbath keepers, more particularly to the Seventh-day Adventists, because the statement in Great Controversy 608, professing faith in the third angel's message. And the only Sabbath keepers who believe the third angel's message is the Seventh-day Adventist Church under the banner of the third angel's message. That majority, millions, will abandon their position, brothers and sisters. And that is the reason that they will be subject to the 7 last plagues. Why? Because they were no longer Sabbath keepers. But what plagues? Symbolical, not the literal plagues. And maybe the symbolical 7 last plagues is not familiar with among the media, but later on, as we proceed to our study, we will discuss it one by one. Here in volume 5, page 190, it says, some who profess to be spokesmen for God are in their daily life denying the faith. They present to the people important truths, but who are impressed by these truths, who are convicted of sin. The hearers know that those who are preaching today tomorrow will be the first to join in pleasure, mirth, and frivolity. Their influence out of the pulpit suits the conscience of the impenitent and causes the ministry to be despised. They are themselves asleep upon the very verge of the eternal world. The blood of souls is upon their garments. Volume 5, page 190. So, let's go back again, brothers and sisters, to our main subject. To repeat again, let us now gradually categorize the events that will take place from 2020 onwards. And our study is even more dwelling 2021 and 2022. Because without any doubts, before the year 2022 will end, God's people will be delivered and they will be brought to Mount Zion. 100% without any doubts, brothers and sisters. And what we need is to study and prepare ourselves. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. It is not our duty to convict any soul. Our only duty is to warn, to preach. The same with Noah, brothers and sisters. So, to repeat again, let us distinctly separate the great multitude to be converted during the Great Tribulation. The great multitude to be converted during the Great Tribulation, brothers and sisters. First, the 144,000 living saints, the type pointing to the literal 12 tribes, that is the type. And we have 144,000 living saints, the antitype, the spiritual Israel. So the statement with the 144,000 is applied to two classes. With the 144,000, those who died and those who will no longer to taste death. And we explained on our previous episode that the term with the 144,000 can be applied only to the loud cry proclamation. Because if the statement with the 144,000 is applied to the time when the people of God will be gathered into the kingdom, then all of them will be with the 144,000 without any exemption. But the mere fact that the shepherd's rod is very specific with the term with the 144,000, pointing only to the loud cry proclamation. Who are they with the 144,000 during the loud cry proclamation in the great time of trouble? They are those who had been especially resurrected under Daniel 12:2, those who died under the faith of the third angel's message, the faithful ones. According to volume 7, page 17, all of them will be resurrected and then proclaim the message of the loud cry in the last proclamation of the loud cry during the great time of trouble. But who are they that will be with the 144,000 during the little time of trouble? They are among the great multitude. Right, brothers and sisters? Among the great multitude, by which in Isaiah 66, brothers and sisters, I would like to read in track number 5. it is among the the great multitude that God will take out some of them to become Levites. Right? So, I think track number 5, page 93. And now as to what swelled the number of preachers from 144,000 to 200 million. So 200 million, brothers and sisters. So it cannot be the great multitude which no man could number, because there is number. So the statement that measure the temple, the altar, and the worshippers, brothers and sisters, and the only group of people that God commanded not to measure, it must be those who will be converted during the great time of trouble. There is no recorded number, although God knoweth how many of them, but there is no recorded number. But it says here, in track number 5, page 93, and now as to what swelled the number of preachers from 144,000 to 200 million, the Lord says, I will also take of them, of those whom the 144,000 shall bring from all nations, after the fulfillment of Isaiah 66, verse 16, the purification of the church, for priests and for Levites. Isaiah 66, verse 21. But only among the Sabbath keepers. Brothers and sisters, because that term, priests and Levites, cannot be applied to Sunday keepers. So those who will be converted during the Great Tribulation, and in the proclamation of the message during the little time of trouble, the one who proclaimed the message at that time are 200 million horses. The horses represent messengers. Why is it 200 million? Because those that had been converted during the Great Tribulation proclaimed the message together with them. So we can number them one by one, how many? And we will discuss that in the subject, I think, the wave ship and the wave loads. Because that is the subject by which we could enumerate the numbers of them. Only the great multitude to be converted during Great Tribulation, by which there is no specific number mentioned in the Bible and the scroll prophecy. So, brethren, to repeat again, the constituent of the great multitude to be converted during Great Tribulation, that is all Sabbath keepers. The constituent of the great multitude to be converted during the little time of trouble, they are those all Sunday keepers or Sunday keeping Christians within the United States of America. But the great multitude to be converted during the great time of trouble, that is all humanity throughout the whole world, throughout the whole earth. Whether they are Christians or not Christians, those who will accept the gospel, those who will accept the message, they will be converted at that time. And they are those by which there is no specific number of that converts. But during the great time, during the Great Tribulation, there is a specific number. During the little time of trouble, there is a specific number. But only during the great time of trouble, by which there was no specific number. So we will continue this subject, brethren, and we need to dig deeper. To repeat again, we will go back to the statement 2SR 162 concerning those who will be judged while living, and they will be judged after the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9. Thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.